Hey Glenn, Sunday morning, NAMM 2017. Kind of tired, but feeling fulfilled and all those warm, good feelings that you get from a big trade show, right?
Yeah. NAMM's always, it's that mixed bag of, you love to see all the people, you get the feedback from the customers. For me, I've been in the business for so many years that it's kind of a family reunion. But then there's 4 days of standing and trying to talk over the sound of the show.
Yeah, so like 85 dB of background noise.
Yeah, I actually pulled out my dB meter the other day, and it was 89 dB in the booth.
All day.
Constant, yeah.
Hey, you don't make drums though.
No, we were not in we're not in the drum aisle.
Yeah, I was just there. It's really bad.
Yeah, I can imagine.
For our Meet the Maker series, you seem like a kind of one of the right guys to talk to, because I mean you've been in the business for a real long time. I mean, how did it all start for you? Your interest and your kind of professional involvement.
My interest. I've been a musician. I was a saxophone player as a kid. I went to Berklee College of Music. I was a fairly good sax player in my local area. I'd win awards for soloing and stuff, and so I went to Berklee College of Music all headstrong, thinking, yeah, I'm a good player. And I was there at the same time as Branford Marsalis. And I realized at that point, I'm never going to be a professional saxophone player. But I was, a friend of mine turned me on. I grew up as a jazz kid. When my friends were listening to Kiss and Led Zeppelin, I was listening to jazz. I was kind of a freak. And
what kind of stuff did you listen to?
Back then, I was listening to a little bit of everything. I mean, Tommy Dorsey.
The classic.
I was listening to the classic stuff, but I was also listening to a lot of the Brucker Brothers was a huge influence in me.
Wayne Shorter,
LA Express, Tom Scott and the LA Express.
Weather Report?
Weather Report, of course. I mean, so as a kid, I was into that stuff. And then in about 1978, 79, this girl named Karen, I still talk to her on Facebook, she takes this Walkman, puts these headphones on me, and she just watches me. And I'm like listening to this thing, I'm like, what is that? This is kind of crazy. And it's songs in 7/4, but it's like a rock band, but it was Devo's Are We Not Men? And so she introduced me to that album, and the sounds and stuff that I was hearing off that album really intrigued me. I'd heard synthesizers, but I never really thought, I thought, oh yeah, it's like an organ or something. But that album, I think, is key to it.
It was kind of one of the first sort of almost electro, because it was very staccato and rigid, wasn't it? I mean, even though they weren't the best players in the world, but they were going for that mechanical feel.
Yeah, and they were doing something that was so different at that time period. I mean, people that might try to come into early Devo at this point in time, they don't have the historical reference point to what was going on at that point in time in music. It was all corporate stuff, and hearing this kind of DIY, kind of grungy, totally different sound was eye-opening to me.
So that kind of piqued your interest, and then what happened? So you got your first synth, you built one, or you?
Well, no. My mother worked for NBC Broadcasters, and her friend was head of the music department. So that every year they'd throw out just these stacks of albums. So I went in there, they had these big stacks, and I just went through one after another. And anyone that said there was a synthesizer on the back, I took that album. And so the next albums for me were Jean-Michel Jarre's Oxygen, and the Tubes' Remote Control. And those two albums hit with me. And from there it was just, I'm all in. And so my first synth was a Moog Prodigy. And I used that for a while, and I wanted to play more than one note, and my mom bought me an Opus 3. And from there it was a Crumar Stratus, and from there a Prophet 5, and from there then it was the...
So you got the bug bad, right?
Yeah. I got it really bad.
An expensive habit.
Yeah, an expensive habit for sure.
So, I mean, then obviously you're in bands and playing music and doing that stuff. I mean, how did you get kind of professionally involved in the kind of design and manufacture aspect of things?
Well, I was doing synthesizer programming in the studios in Boston with my Prophet 5. I was one of the few guys that had one, knew how to use it at that point in time. And right about the time when the DX7 came out, and all of a sudden people in studios that were programming synths kind of went away. At that point I decided that I really wanted to get into the electronics and understand how to build them. So I took a little DeVry electronics 1-year course I didn't want to be an engineer, but I wanted to understand the electronics of them enough that I could modify and do things and know how to talk to engineers. So I got my 2-year engineering degree. From there, I just started working at recording studios. My first real job was as a technician at 360 Systems. We made the thing called the MIDI bass, MIDI patcher. I did that for about 2.5 years, and I went to work at Roland. I was the senior tech there for a few years, and then I worked in their pro audio division and started getting more into product at that point in time.
And then you kind of start, because you see what's going on inside, I suppose you have the understanding of how they're made and how to maybe make them more cost effectively and that whole thing. I mean, because I think a lot of people kind of go, why doesn't it do that? Why doesn't it do this? Why haven't they used that? I mean, but I don't think a lot of people realise that a component that costs 25 cents more than, and that ends up being $1, it's roughly 4 times the amount, isn't it?
Yeah, 4 to 5 times is where it ends up. And the synthesizer industry, as big as people think it is, it's really small. So we're not buying in the volumes of Apple. So when people want to say, oh, but I can do this on my iPhone, it's like, yeah, but they can buy them at the quantities of 10 million. We're buying things in quantities of 2,000. You don't get the same price points. So it's very different. Also, when you've got a company that has huge, numbers of people and IP and all this kind of stuff, it's different. But
so when you were at Roland, what did you get some input on some of the products there as well?
Not really. Most of the development was done in Japan. When I worked in the pro audio division, when I was in the tech department, I was doing a lot of testing of products. We'd find problems with them. We'd report back. We'd give them workflow things, suggestions, and sometimes they would implement that. At that time, Roland Japan was really the development head. So Roland US, we'd give them ideas and things, and sometimes they would take them, sometimes they wouldn't. When I got into the pro audio division, we got a little bit more hands-on in that area.
So what was the first electronic instrument that you kind of had a real hand in, you think?
Truly, the first one was when I was brought over to Akai. A friend of mine from Roland was the product manager for Alesis after Jack O'Donnell had bought them. They needed somebody to rebuild Akai out of the ashes, and my friend Jim said, oh yeah, Glenn would be perfect for this. And at that time I was in video post-production. I had left it all. I was doing sound effects for cartoons and doing motion graphics and all kinds of other things. After I left Roland in '95, I did TV stuff for about 10 years. But the passion is always there for synthesizers. I was doing sound design for Arturia back in 2002 and stuff. So the passion was there. I had never gotten totally away from this stuff. So my first real product where they said, here's the keys to the company, you can do what you want, just don't drive the company into a telephone pole, was at Akai. And so Jack O'Donnell gave me that opportunity, and my first product was the MPD-24.
Okay.
Yeah. And
was the MPD more of a controller? I'm trying to remember the...
Yeah, it was a controller. It
was kind of the first controller pad set, wasn't it?
It was the second one. The first one was the M-Audio trigger finger.
That's right, okay.
And so we were coming in, and Akai had previously had a MPD-16, but it was kind of not done right. So we came in with the 24, did it right. It took off, sales ballooned up, and it kind of set the stage for all the other products that I got to build there. The MPK line of keyboards, the APC40 was my product there.
So then fast forward into Arturia world, and now you're kind of getting to do perhaps what your first love was at school, which was building synthesizers. So you get to play with the... Were you involved in the Mini and the Micro Brutes and the...
Yeah.
So from the beginning there.
Mini Brute, I had at first proposed the product to Frederick. I said, you guys need to be doing this. This is a perfect product for you guys. They had done the Origin, they had done the Spark hardware. I said, there's this market right now for these non-programmable monophonic analog synth. And many dealers and many distributors told them, nobody wants one of those things. And I kept telling them, no, they do. You got to just trust me on this one. They do want this. And so this was at a weird period for me. I was just doing consulting at Akai at that point. So I showed it to Frederick, and then I got pulled back in full time to Akai, so I had to walk away from the product. So they took it with Yves Yasson and Bruno Pillay, and they ended up building the product. But I was the one who initially said, here's what you should do and here's how you should build it.
And now, of course, we're on to the Matrix Brute.
Matrix Brute.
We just got one literally just before I came out to NAMM.
Yeah, we just started shipping.
So I didn't get a chance to play it, but it's a monster.
Yeah, it's crazy.
First question, how the hell did you convince any company to build something so sort of drastic?
Well, it started off a lot smaller. I mean, the thing was it was really going to be kind of a follow-up of what's the next thing from the Mini Brute up. And we started looking at programmable Mini Brute, just make a programmable version. But I really wanted to do something different. And what I wanted more like an MS-20 with a patch bay, but I wanted a programmable patch bay. So I started off with this thing of, okay, I want a patch bay, and how can we make it where if I plug in from here to here, it can carry a signal, but it can also then have a digital signal in the back door somewhere that it could go, okay, this plug is going from here to here. And so we started thinking, well, what if we use like tip ring sleeve, and on the ring we sit there and we write a digital signal, and that idea got shot down pretty quickly. And it was at the same time one of the engineers, a guy named Robert, he came up with this video chip that was a video matrix chip. He said, well, maybe we could take this and repurpose it to do control voltages, and kind of do like the old pin matrix on a VCS3 or something. And that's where the matrix came out of. So it wasn't that chip. They ended up developing their own system for it.
Yeah, I mean, because 16 by 16 DAC conversion that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and so our engineer Bruno designed the matrix himself on it. Bruno's our lead analog engineer, and he's the guy that he's really the guy behind the Mini Brute and the Micro Brute and the Matrix Brute as far as the engineering goes on it.
And so now it's out in the world. Are you feeling do you sit back at night, glass of wine, thinking, hey, I had a big hand in that. That's awesome.
No, it usually doesn't hit me until you start getting customers walking up and saying, oh, hey, I bought this and I used it on this album, or I've had a couple people come up and say, oh, I bought this thing and it changed the way I've done things, or guys who bought the Micro Brute, and my goal with the Micro Brute was, here's a synthesizer for the singer in the band, or the drummer in the band, or somebody that just wants to play a couple notes, or for the beginner synthesist. And I've had a couple people who are like film scoring that said, I got started on that thing, and just having those couple patch points then inspired me, and now I have this full modular. And it's like, that's what I wanted it to do. And that's where
you're basically a peddler.
I'm the heroin dealer.
Evil nicotine.
I'm the heroin dealer. No, that's where the joy comes. It's not even just seeing the product done, but it's seeing that it's inspiring somebody to create music.
And there's a moment, isn't there? Because an instrument can have specifications and all the things that it should have, but it sometimes takes a life of its own and has its own charisma and character, and becomes something that you can interact with more effectively. I mean, that transition, when you see that happening, must be very rewarding, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, my philosophy is it's got to be a musical instrument first. So, you can have great specs, and it takes very little skill to come up with a spec list. You can sit there and just write, oh, it should do this and this and this and this and this. Making it do those things and do it in a musical way is where the trick is. It's knowing what specs you have to cut off of it, what features you have to cut out. It's not that you didn't think about this list of 1,000 features, it's that you knew which 100 to put in the product and which ones to leave out.
And I guess how to access them so they become intuitive as well.
Yeah. My thing's always, the guys get tired of hearing me say it. I said, I want the 90%. What do I have to do 90% of the time on this unit? As I walk up to it, what's the 90% that I do? 90% of the time on a drum machine, I'm making a pattern, or I'm turning a sound, or I'm hitting a thing, or I want to change a sound or preset or whatever. Those things have to be right there. They have to be in the front. They have to be in your face. You have to be able to do them. Changing the slope of the envelope decay on, envelope 7 is something that you can, bury down into menus and stuff. And so I understand that hierarchy of how important is this? How often is somebody going to access this? Can we do it via software instead of putting it on the hardware?
Well, Glenn, thank you very much for talking to us. It's been a pleasure. Wish you every success with the Matrix Brute and products into the future.
Thank you very much.